Lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Could we all stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is the Planning and Zoning Board and Local Planning Agency. It's an advisory board which makes recommendations to the county commissioners who will make the final decision on these items. Items G5, G7, and G8 are LPA items. Items on today's agenda will be heard by the county commission, on October 5th at 5 p.m. here in the commission room. When a motion ends in any kind of split vote, a roll call vote may be taken to ensure accuracy. As a reminder, each member who makes a motion or a second needs to turn on their microphone so that you are on the record. Speakers for public comment on the agenda items will be given 3 minutes. At this time, if any board member has had any ex parte communication regarding any application, please disclose so now. Okay, seeing that, I need a motion for approval of the P&Z minutes from August 14th, 2023.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Brian, a second by Debbie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously. Okay, item,
Mr. Chair, I just want everyone to understand that item G7 and G8, no date for the board has been established yet, so that's to be determined at a later date.
and we do not need a vote anyway on 8 anyhow, correct?
That would be my understanding.
Correct. It's just to give feedback so that the board can consider any concerns you guys might have.
Recommendations,
Yes, sir.
okay. Okay, item G1, please.
Good afternoon. Glenn R. Miller, Sr. and Glenn R. Miller, Jr. request a change of zoning classification from SEU to AUL. Application number 23Z00036, tax account numbers 2703311 and 3027845, located in District 5.
Okay, is the applicant here? Just if you could state your name and address, sir, for the record, and a little bit about what you're wanting to do there.
My name is Jim Evers. My address is 1795 Evers Road, Auburn, Florida. I'm the applicant's general contractor. We'll be building a barn-style home for the applicant and a few other improvements he wants to do for his agricultural ventures. Just he's no commercial. He's not looking for any sort of commercial opportunity. He's just looking for growth for animals and produce, things of that nature.
All right, hold on one second, sir. Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I bring it back to the board. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, John.
I have a question for staff. Why AU Light? What's wrong with SEU based on what he was saying they wanted to do?
SEU does not allow for the agricultural uses that are allowed in the AUL.
Okay, but it does allow for, under conditional, it does allow for horses and mules and goats.
It does for personal uses, yes.
Okay. Are they going to have, are they going to treat it as a farm?
Yes, sir. He
Okay.
raises bird dogs and deer dogs.
Bird dogs and deer dogs?
Yes, sir.
Labradors?
They're all German short hairs and beagles.
Oh, okay. I noticed that they own the property next door also,
His
where
father
their
does.
house is
Correct. Yes,
located.
sir.
That's also SEU.
Yes, sir.
but they don't want to change that one.
No, sir.
Okay. All right. It just seems strange to me that they would go through all this when what they're doing, it doesn't really seem to require the change. I mean, couldn't they do what they wanted to do just under SEU?
No.
No.
That
That was a really complex answer you gave me there.
Just, I like when it gets to the point.
I do my best.
Oh, thank you. Okay, no's a no. Okay, thank you.
Now, a little bit about what he's wanting to do there, because doesn't he have 1,000 acres out there or so, possibly?
It's all mitigation ground. Everything out there.
But it's all wetlands.
Yes, sir.
And what's he looking to do again?
He's going to raise the bird dogs and deer dogs and have them, basically, he wants to
So
train
he
there on the
can
property.
Train them
dogs.
out there,
Yes, sir.
right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know where that is.
Yeah, I know, it's good.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I motion to approve.
And I'll second that.
All right. We've got a motion by Mr. Robert, a second by Henry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed
Thank you both for
unanimously.
your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, item G2.
Excuse me, the Powers Family Revocable Living Trust, being represented by Kelly Hyvonen, requests a change of zoning classification from AU, SEU, and BU1 to all AU. Application number 23Z00062, tax account numbers 246-2101 and 302-6965, located in District 1.
Okay, is the applicant here?
Hi, good afternoon. Kelly Hyvonen, planning consultant with Land Development Strategies.
And a little bit about what you're wanting to do, Ms. Kelly.
Not that we really need that, but maybe it'll help. So I'm representing Aaron Powers on behalf of the Powers Family Living Revocable Trust. Right now, this property has a combination of CC future land use right off of US 1, and then residential 4 behind that, and then there's a little sliver of residential 1. All of the existing future land use designations we have, we intend to keep, and we're just seeking to switch up the zoning a little bit. So if you can see in the zoning map, all the way to the west side, there's BU1 that has frontage along US 1. There's the AU, which is the core of the property, and then there's a tiny bit of SEU on the east side. All of those we want to rezone to AU for the purpose of a single-family home with accessory uses. So the lot combination, we've also submitted that because we know that will be required for future development because this is a couple different parcels right now. This request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and is in keeping with the character of the area already. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Ms. Kelly, 1 second. Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? That's great news. Seeing that, I bring it back to the board. Any questions for Ms. Kelly?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
a question. You want to do agricultural pursuits, what kind?
They don't have a desire for any agricultural pursuits at this time. Single-family home, accessory uses. I forget what they call it in Brevard County, but it's kind of a mother-in-law suite. So they have the ability to do that in that zoning district. He wants a shed to do man projects out of. So there, AU is all over this area, so we want to maintain the bulk of that. Man projects, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have you considered AUL?
The desire of the property owner is to maintain AU since that's what he has already today, and that's what his neighbors have. So AU works for the current property owner, but maybe 20 years down the road, he wants to maintain that AU if he were to ever sell it and somebody wanted to pursue more agricultural uses on the property.
My concern is it's right next to the Indian River Lagoon.
I mean, through a flag lot,
And
yes.
And you want to have agricultural pursuits right there.
They do not want agricultural pursuits, but they want to maintain the ability to do that in the future if maybe a future owner wants to do that, but they intend to build a home here and live there.
So he wants to be able to, in the future, do commercial sales.
No, he doesn't. He just doesn't want to lose that ability to do so because it currently has that zoning, and
Okay.
so does the property to the south. And he is also giving up BU1 zoning along the frontage along US 1 because he has no intent to do commercial type developments. So he's saying, hey, I'll get rid of the BU1, make it all AU, and move forward with my single family desires. But he would like to maintain that AU if at all possible.
Okay.
What was that building in the past?
I think it's vacant.
What was it? It hasn't always been vacant.
You know, I don't know. I didn't know there was a property there previously. It could have been an old house. It kind of looks like everything in that area is little single-family houses that have sprouted up there. But if there was a home there, it's gone now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. John.
Kelly, in follow-up to Ron's question, you're stating that a future landowner could want it as agricultural. And his concern that he raised is that if it's agricultural, then you're close to the river and there could be some issues. I would think that we would have to treat that as what you're asking for to be done now, not what's happening in the future if he sells it. So if he wanted to do something in agricultural, giving him an AU designation would allow him to do that.
Okay, and I guess the major change that we're making for the sole purpose of not having to submit multiple different legal descriptions to you is we just submitted a legal description that covers the whole property rather than just the BU1. So effectively, all we really cared about was changing the BU1 to AU to match the rest of the property. But we just submitted the legal description we had, so it covers the whole property. So we're looking to reestablish AU across the entire property. Now, what can or can't happen in AU, I have an understanding of what that is. That's not the intent of the owner. But we still think AU is within keeping of the character of the rest of that and along with all the other zoning to the south, which is also AU. So I'm not really sure how to respond to, could someone come in there and pollute the Indian River? I don't know. That's not
Well, with an
the
AU,
plan.
he could.
That's not his plan, but also there's AU zoning even closer to the river. And everyone has those property rights to go ahead and do what isn't within keeping of the zoning that they have. So we're only asking really to change the BU1 at the front. I know it's more of a blanket statement across the whole thing. It's just being reestablished.
And AUL would not work.
Let me look at what AUL means.
Mr. Chair, if I can just interject for a second. So,
Yes, sir, please.
So
One-word answer.
Currently, right now, there are 3 zoning districts on that property. You have the BU1 that's up along Highway 1, and then it goes back to AU, and then the flag stem itself is SEU, and the portion of the property that's on the east side of Indian River Road is SEU. Currently, SEU does not allow for agricultural type uses, so if this board recommends AU or AUL would allow for agritourism uses.
And I mean, I would be supportive of not changing the SEU. We don't, it doesn't really matter to us what the zoning is of that piece to the east, because that's just going to be where they put their dock. It's a tiny little piece of property at the end of their flag lot. So, I mean, the differences between AU and AUL still allows for agricultural pursuits of a non-commercial nature. So he could still be potentially doing the same uses with AUL as AU.
So Kelly, the main thing is to get the structures, correct?
Correct, yep. single-family home with accessory uses. It's really to change the whole intent of this was to change the BU1 to AU.
Right.
But the legal description we provided was just for the
For a
whole kit and
blanket.
caboodle. Yep, because it was just easier, because then we would have had to define where the line is between BU1 and AU and figure that out, and then get a legal description drawn for it. So,
EU2, does that restrict the structures? I mean, AU would put her consistent with what's south of her, but EU2 would put her consistent with what's north of you. You see what I'm saying?
but EU2, I don't think is consistent with the future land use designations that are already in place across the entire property. And we did not apply for a future land use change. AU went along with
You're trying to take the simple road.
all of, yes,
I like it.
yes, I am.
That puts you very consistent with what's south. Even south, the AU is out by the river.
Yep.
BDP? I know we hate them.
I hate
That's
it.
why we would go that route though, because they already have AU on,
Yeah.
on the majority of the property.
Yeah.
Right.
My concern was that I was hoping that, since she is coming in, that, and they don't intend to do commercial uses, that they would go with the less intensive use. I understand that she's got rights that she doesn't want to give up, and so I'm saying, fine, that's her choice.
Right.
So-
Yes, sir.
So EU2 does have a size limitation as far as accessory structures. So it's limited to 50% of the principal dwelling structure, or 600 square feet, whichever is more. The agricultural zoning classification, whether it's AU or AUL, does not have that restriction.
That is of importance because
Mother-in-law suite.
the mother-in-law suite, and then he wants a large detached accessory structure for his own personal use and
For man things.
for man things, yes. So, and that will be a larger size than the standard residential
600.
zoning districts would allow. Yes,
Right.
sir.
Can you define man things, please?
Go there.
Oh, gosh, that is outside my professional expertise, but
We're
like
good. We gotta get
tractor,
back to the zoning here. Okay.
lawnmower.
I have a question for staff. Future land use, they can do Res 1 or Res 4, but they can't have the additional structures, correct?
I think they
So,
can.
so currently it has 3 different land use categories. You have the CC up front, which allows for commercial uses, and in the middle is Res 4, which is 4 units the acre. And then the stem and the portion that is along the river is Res 1. So combined, we would have to look at the combined acreages and see where that mix as far as how many units could be allowed on the property.
So I'd be more concerned about her coming back and saying, hey, I want community commercial, rather than AU. So to
Well,
me,
I know everyone up here hates a BDP.
yeah,
But if you went AU with a BDP for no agricultural uses, that way we're not taking a chance of polluting the lagoon with fertilizers and this, that, and the other. You'd still have your structures.
Okay.
Am I saying that right?
If that was, so I'm just throwing it out there for you guys to consider. If it's not so much the agricultural uses, it's the agritourism uses. So if that's the pleasure of the board to restrict the agritourism uses rather than the agricultural uses, I think that would be more appropriate.
So you could still get the structures
Correct.
with the square footage you're looking for.
With a restriction on what?
Agritourism uses.
Okay, how do you define agritourism uses? Just because I didn't see
It's
it.
based on the state statute.
weddings, for example. Having weddings on the property.
Fall festivals.
Yeah.
Anything like that.
Okay, that is,
And
sorry, that is not what I was thinking. I was thinking people paying to ride your donkey or something like that,
That's
right?
part of it, too.
I-
Man things.
Well, that's like family things, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm in agreement with the AU with the agriculture. I have an agricultural background. I went to the University of Florida for agriculture education and communications. There's best management practices throughout agriculture to make sure that there's not pollution into the aquifer, into the lagoon, and a lot of the topics that come up is about septic to sewer conversions. I think that farmers and agriculturalists are aware of what they're putting into the land. So I think restricting the agricultural uses, as in farming, being able to produce crops, if they want to have so many cows, whatever, I think that limits their property rights and what they're able to do if they have the room for it. Agritourism is a great place to have a small business, seeing that all over the state of Florida. So I frown upon putting any BDPs on here that's going to restrict any agricultural process or.
I didn't want a BDP. I was
Yeah.
just talking to Mr. Ron over there because
I'm just
we don't really
voicing my
like
opinion.
No,
Yeah.
you're doing a great job. Keep going.
So, yeah. But yeah, no, I think the precision agriculture that we have now, technology and innovations allows for specific fertilizers, pesticides, things like that, to where you're not overloading and run off into the river. I think and that just shows in the whole county, we're not an agricultural county necessarily. We have a lot of houses. And so the problems with the lagoon isn't necessarily runoffs. It's our homes. It's our septic systems and all that. So I would love this to be agriculture and be able to protect the foundations of what I would say America was built on.
Well said.
I have a question for Jeff. Are there any restrictions on the flags themselves? I mean, on the post of the flag lots, as far as use?
No, so, it's a platted lot that way. But generally speaking, flag stems have to be a minimum of 25 feet, and there can't be two of them together, or I should say, there can only be two together.
Okay. And their use can only be as a driveway or as an access way?
We don't restrict the use.
So,
If I may, sir, the flag is actually very narrow in this case, and it will just be a driveway. And he likes the fact that it has two access points, because he also has a large RV that he needs to sometimes loop around. So it would just be a driveway, that yellow stem right there.
That's why he needs this big garage.
One of the reasons.
Yeah.
One of the man reasons.
One of the man reasons.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to go with as they applied to change all three lots to AU zoning.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and we got a second by Debbie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
opposed.
John opposed. Other than that, it passed.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. And item G3 has been withdrawn, correct?
No action is needed.
Okay, item G4.
Joshua and Christy Jones request a change of zoning classification from GU to RU 111, application number 23Z00061, tax account number 2444034, located in District 1.
Okay, ma'am, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Christy Jones, 555 Cox Road, Cocoa, Florida, 32926.
All right, and a little bit about what you're wanting to do here?
Build a single-family residence.
That's pretty cut and dry.
Learned from
Simple.
Jeff.
Yeah, you've been hanging out with that guy too long, huh? All right, 1 second while you're there. Is there anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, sir, if you could just step aside and let him take the podium. And sir, when you get there, if you could state your name and address for the record.
My name is Mark Stilley. I live at 3401 Craggy Bluff Place, which is right down the road from this parcel that's been already cleared, and I don't have any objections to a zoning change. What I do have an objection to is the lot was clear-cut completely with no building permit, no silt fences, etc. So I would suggest, and like to make an idea, that any zoning changes or building permits be denied for at least a minimum of 1 year. We have rules and regulations for runoff, where you have to have silt fences and whatever to clear cut. Also, this particular lot goes right into a drainage ditch that's on Craigie Bluff that the county hadn't maintained, so one of our local people took it upon himself to maintain it. And this will aggravate that tremendously, especially with clear cutting. So, like I said, if you don't want to pull a building permit to begin with and follow the basic rules, why should you be granted anything? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anybody else would like to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I bring it back to the board. If y'all could come back up.
I got one question. Your lot is basically what, 767, is that right?
I don't know what that means.
The number, seven?
I don't think we have a number.
Oh,
How much driveway, how much
there's
access?
33 feet,
You have 33 feet? So you're right in that,
right in the curve.
right in that little turn?
768, actually.
You're 768 or 7, yeah. Yeah. That's gonna be a trick in itself.
I spoke to Nathan Otteson, and he said that there is room to get a driveway in there.
But did he say it was gonna be tricky?
No, he said that he didn't see any
Okay.
problem with it.
That was,
And we did not clear the entire land.
are you gonna have is that James Road?
Yes.
So you have a James Road address?
We don't know yet, because it's
Okay.
James Road, it's the corner of James and Blue Ridge Ave.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
it'd be,
That's good.
okay,
I was worried about your access, not for you, but
okay.
just how it fit. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
I'll just ask, where are you putting the house?
Yeah.
Right by where the entrance is?
On the large side of the,
Yeah, the big
The thick part of the
Yes.
triangle?
yeah, the other part, we're not doing anything with this whole area over there. It is wet, and we're just gonna, it's not gonna be cleared or anything. That's all gonna be natural and left natural, which is the area behind the lake that he's talking of, the drainage lake. So the house will go right here.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
And what area did you say you cleared?
Right here, we didn't clear it. We had a bush hog go in so we could see where we could put the house. It was all pepper trees.
So he just mowed down the pepper trees.
So what you took down was Brazilian peppers?
Yes,
Everything?
yes.
That's all you took down?
Yes,
Okay.
there are still pine trees on the property that
We didn't take
we
any
didn't
trees or
take any
nothing like that.
trees.
Nothing like that.
You're allowed to get them without a permit?
Pine trees?
The
No.
pepper
No,
trees.
no, no.
No, no. Let me know when drag is too fast, but
Yes.
the Brazilian pepper.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, you got a motion by John, a second by Logan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Item G5.
Chairman, if I could, I'd like to read in G5 and G6 together.
Okay.
Okay. Terrance P. and Peggy A. Mulreany, represented by Kelly Hyvonen, request a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment under 23S.16 to change the future land use designation from NC to CC under application 23SS00016, tax account 2400699, located in District 1. And the companion application, again, is Terrance P. and Peggy A. Mulreany, represented by Kelly Hyvonen, request a change of zoning classification from GU to BU2 under application number 23Z, 00056, tax account number 2400699, located in District 1.
Mr. Chair, before you discuss these two items are companion applications. You can just discuss them together. However, you need to have separate motions for each.
Okay.
Kelly Hyvonen, planning consultant with Land Development Strategies. Don't let this stripe in my printer confuse you here. Once that pops up at some point. I'll just start with my spiel. I'm representing Terry and Peggy Mulreany. We are seeking to change the future land use from NC to CC on 1.15 acres, and then to change the zoning from GU to BU2 for retail, warehousing, and wholesale commercial. Now, that yellow stripe through there, that's supposed to be red. That is my printer. So I got to fix the blue, apparently. As you can see, today we're talking about the donut hole in the middle. This will all look familiar because I came before you on September 12th, 2022 for everything south of the subject parcel that's in red. And then I came back before you on April 17th for everything kind of north, east, and west of the subject property. And just as we were finally wrapping up the last one, the property owner in the subject property sold to my client. So if that would have happened just a month earlier, we could have brought it all together. So we're finally filling in the donut hole here. We're requesting the same future land use and zoning to fill in the middle of that donut hole. It's a logical extension of the existing community commercial in BU2 and the industrial to the south in the city of Cocoa. It will have direct access to Grissom. Right now, it's just kind of an island by itself. And now that it's sold to the new owner, the owner owns all the pieces to the north, east, and west, so it does now have access to Grissom once he's able to aggregate those properties together. Approval of these requests will create a unified development parcel with consistent future land use and zoning for a future office, warehouse, or distribution use that's compatible with all the existing uses to the south. Let's see here. It's not encroaching into any of the residential area to the north and east because those are vacant and haven't been platted with rights of way to even be able to develop. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
1 second, Kelly. Is anyone in the audience want to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing that, I bring it back to the board. Any questions for the applicant?
Kelly, any man-things on this lot?
I don't know, it depends what the future users are. Things that can make a lot of people happy, like the Amazon distribution center to the south makes
You mean
all
the
of us
vacant
happy.
Amazon distribution?
Is it vacant still?
Yes, they haven't opened it.
Well, someone's getting property taxes from that, right? Okay.
Absolutely. I move to approve.
A second.
Got a motion by John, a second by Robert, and this is item G5.
Mm-hmm.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item G5 passed unanimously. I'll need another motion for G6.
So moved.
So second.
Got a motion by John, a second by Robert on item G6. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Have a nice day.
You too.
Item G7.
G7 and G8 are both related to the county's implementation of the Live Local Act. With the chair's permission, I'll introduce them together.
Yes, sir, please.
The Live Local Act is designed to facilitate and encourage affordable housing, the development of affordable housing. Staff has developed BCC 100, which we are seeking a review on today, to implement the land use aspects of the act. Of particular importance, the act requires the county to administratively approve developments that meet certain criteria, even if not consistent with certain zoning, land use, and height requirements. The implementation would effectively layer the Live Local Act provisions on top of the county's existing policy. Unlike some other jurisdictions, we would not be removing our existing affordable housing incentives and replacing them with the Live Local Act requirements. Instead, the incentives that exist today would continue to carry forward upon the adoption of BCC 100. However, I do want to be clear about something. That does not mean that incentives can be commingled. For example, if you are seeking density incentives under the existing code, you don't get that density bonus on top of the Live Local Act. You really choose one lane or the other effectively. There has been considerable discussion in a variety of circles about potential ambiguities in the Live Local Act. It is because of this that staff is suggesting to use a board policy as the primary avenue for implementation of the act. If additional information comes to light, or if the law is amended, we would be in a better position to quickly adapt than if it was implemented directly into the county ordinance. That said, in developing this policy and researching act, one code amendment was identified as being required, which involves the definition of a quote-unquote major transit stop. The code amendment proposed under G7 is being put forward because the Live Local Act requires the county to consider reduced parking requirements for those qualifying affordable housing developments within a half mile of a major transit stop, quote, as it is defined in the county's land development code. The county does not currently have such a definition in its code, and that's why we're bringing forward this code amendment. We sought input from the Brevard County Transit Department in crafting the definition, who suggested modeling the definition after FDOT's definition of transit center, and that's what we've tried to do here. It's unclear how often the major transit stop provision would actually be utilized, because the county already has provisions to allow for reduced parking requirements, and that may be a more straightforward path to developers, but we are required to have this provision, so that's why it's being forward today. So with that said, we would appreciate any input you have on either of the items.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. John.
The definition for a major transit stop, you give examples, Titus Landing, Shepherd Park, Cocoa Transit Center, Melbourne Square Mall, and Hammock Landing, none of which are in the county. I mean, they're in the county, but they're not in unincorporated county.
Well, interestingly, the way the Live Local Act provision works, it's not whether the bus stop is within the county, it's whether the development is within a county. So even if the bus stop was within a city, if the development is within unincorporated county and it falls under our code, we would look to this definition. So the bus stop that triggers it can be within a city. Conversely, if a development was happening in a city, our definition wouldn't apply at all. That would be up to the city to create their own definition for that particular development. So where the bus stop is not really the determining factor, it's where the development happens. And then we would apply our definition regardless of where the bus stop would be.
Yes, but you're specifying that it has to be within a half a mile.
Yeah, that's in the Live Local Act
I
says
know,
that.
I understand that, and that's the crux of it, because if there are no major stops in unincorporated area or close to the border with a municipality, then a developer would not be able to utilize this.
That is true. They would be able to use other provisions of the code. I would say, I believe Hammock Landing is within a half a mile of unincorporated Brevard County, if I'm not mistaken.
It's on Palm Bay Road, isn't it?
Yeah, and then west of that has some unincorporated areas, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case,
I didn't measure it to
this
see.
is subject to change depending on what bus stops happen to meet that definition, depending on what Brevard County Transit does.
Could there be a map overlay provided to show these locations so that a developer could know what land to purchase in what areas because there are these major stops and take advantage of it?
Yes, we'd have to update it periodically, but I think that could be accomplished.
I would prefer that. Graphically, it would work out much better for everyone if that could be done. That would be my recommendation.
So technically, there's nothing on Merritt Island.
Yes, there is. I mean, isn't 520 and Courtney considered a major stop? Major transit stop?
I would have to defer to Brevard County Transit on which of their stops fall under this particular definition.
Exactly, and that's important, because if we're talking unincorporated and a developer wants to come in and take advantage of this in the unincorporated areas, it's got to be half a mile from somewhere, so we need to identify where those are.
Well, isn't that the whole issue? What is a transit stop?
Yeah, that's what they're trying to define.
I mean,
Couldn't you
what
make
is
it
the-
transit route rather than a transit stop?
No, I mean, well,
Live local says
Live
stop.
local says major transit stop has to be
Right.
defined in the code, yeah.
You know, you'd think this could be simplified enough to where you have everything defined as it applies to this particular code at this time.
Right.
And just say, hey, you can do it here, you can do it there, and instead of the guesswork.
Yeah, it seems a little vague.
Well, that's just a suggestion. I mean, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
If we could identify those areas that would, and also if one is built, you know, if a new transit stop is added, then that would be included, and then developments could go up around it.
But I think we still need to define transit stop. Is it a bus every hour, every 5 hours, a train,
We don't get trains.
an
I agree
airport?
with
We don't
that.
have a train.
So,
I agree with that, Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to also add to the area that
right.
associated to that, so.
So,
Chairman?
staff, we do not need a vote on that. They're just looking for recommendations, correct?
Correct, we're seeking review and recommendations at this time, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
So
sir.
you're using the DOT standard?
We modeled it after the definition, FDOT's definition of transit center. We searched pretty extensively on various definitions. There is no contextually relevant definition in Florida statute itself. So we kind of searched far and wide for a good definition, or Brevard County Transit did anyway. And that's the best they could come up with.
Yeah, the DOT is pretty much for intermodal and not necessarily for what this poorly written Senate Bill 102 was. So I'm letting my opinion come out early. So our recommendation is to follow the DOT standard because it is a statewide standard and this is a state Senate bill. So my recommendation would be to follow that standard, but with the understanding that DOT is for intermodal, not necessarily the transit or for development.
I think there's stops that are not on DOT right away either, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I don't hear anybody talking about the definition for G7. So can we move to G8?
I got one more thing. This applies to oh, I have to put it over here, sorry. The reduction of, you had mentioned that earlier that we have already considered within the county lower parking requirements. Can you elucidate on that a little more? I mean, what, for an example, an apartment building, how many parking spots per unit?
There's a couple provisions that could apply in the affordable housing provisions of county code. For example, I believe for studio apartments that meet affordable housing criteria, it's a 1-to-1, one space per unit. Okay. That's an example of an incentive that wouldn't be available for something that's not affordable housing or workforce housing.
A studio would require 2, then, you're saying? If
No,
it wasn't
I'm saying it
affordable?
normally would require more spaces per unit. Under the existing county code, there's already a provision to allow for reduced parking requirements for 1 space per unit.
I understand that, but my question is, if it's not affordable, what's the requirement?
In that situation, parking studies can be provided to get certain reduced parking requirements.
So our current code for multifamily is 1.75 spaces per unit. And it doesn't matter whether it's a single or 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom apartment unit. By code requires 1.75 parking spaces
Per unit then, okay. So with affordable, you'll drop that down to 1, even for a 3-bedroom?
Well, to be clear, though, that's what I was trying to get at before. If you're if you're looking to follow this provision, the live local provision, you're now outside of the existing incentives. You can't layer them on that way. So if you were going to do the live local aspect of it, it just says the county shall consider. And that's what the Live Local Act says we must do, and that's what we would do. We would then ask for studies to determine what that correct number is. In any given situation, it'd be a case-by-case basis. If you, what I was trying to say was, there's also already incentives available under the county code, and that might be an easier route for many developers to use what already exists, and that's not going away.
Without them having to find a major traffic stop? Okay. I'm just curious. Thank you.
And that would just be the minimum they would have to have for affordable housing. Like, they'd have to at least have 1 per unit. They
Correct.
could have more.
Correct.
Okay.
Minimum.
They wouldn't want more. It makes the project more expensive.
Everybody has a car nowadays.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You can't, it wouldn't work.
Any other discussion?
G7 or G8?
On G7. If there's no more discussion on G7, we'll move for discussion on G8.
Okay.
Waiting on you, Mr. Henry.
Can I go if he doesn't?
Yes, sir, Mr. John.
Okay. At the bottom of the pages, you're saying on the coding that your strikeouts are deletions and your underlined are additions. Is that correct?
G8?
Yeah, on G8. Because if you go to page 5, you got a lot of strikeouts. What are you striking out here? Are you striking out the live local?
Are you looking at the attachment that says Chapter 2023-17? That's not ours, that's the Live Local Act itself. That was attached for your use. So you
Okay.
can see, this is actually what the statute did, that
They struck out their own provisions?
Yes, these are the code amendments that they did.
Oh, okay.
So they deleted certain parts of Florida statute, replaced them, et cetera.
All right.
The
That-
policy
That's
that
a
was
good
attached is our
explanation.
implementation.
It got a little confusing because it seemed like you were overstepping yourselves.
Oh, I'm sorry if it appeared that way.
Yeah, it would have-
BCC 100 is our proposal.
Okay, all right. Then let's go to, are we then just to look at the Live Local Act as it affects the unincorporated parts of the county? Because part of this talks about municipalities and other things. So I'm trying to get a separation here of what we really should look at where it pertains to us as the LPA for unincorporated.
So this board interpretation would be only for properties that are in an unincorporated area. The Live Local Act also has provisions for cities to implement that in basically the same way, but different jurisdiction.
Right, okay, I thought so, all right.
How's that gonna work with the cities and stuff?
I know that they were working on, their implementation on their own. I don't know. I believe Melbourne was looking to revamp their zoning code, but when we looked at it, we determined that we did not need to update our zoning code to allow for this.
Some of what you see in this proposed policy was actually modeled after what Melbourne is amending their code with. We use some similar language, so you might see some commonalities across different jurisdictions, implementations, but there will also obviously be some differences.
Because everybody thinks differently here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask staff a question. All right, when you have a planned development adjacent to a single-family home, how are the mechanics going to work for a public hearing.
Can you ask me the question again?
If you have a planned development that is going in under this Live Local Act, and it is adjacent to a single-family home, the Live Local Act prohibits public hearings. How's the mechanics
okay.
going to work
So,
for this?
The Live Local Act pertains to 3 different properties, land use wise. You have commercial, you have industrial, and you have mixed use. If those properties aren't one of those 3, then you cannot use the Live Local Act to get your density bonus, so to speak. So it's really dependent on the land use category. So if you have if you have single family adjacent to a commercial property, and they're using the Live Local Act, so yes, that would not require a public hearing. However, you'd have to meet the height requirements that are already established in our zoning district.
Okay, so my heartburn with that is that, what's the board for? If we can just use staff to determine what the public requirements for zoning are going to be, why even have a board? Because this is the first area of where the public can actually come in and offer an objection or support for a particular zoning. And this is being taken away not by representatives of elected officials, but by non-elected officials. Now, whether you guys are good guys or bad guys, doesn't matter. It's the process that is that I have a little heartburn with. Is because now the state is mandating that you can bypass a procedure that has been going on for decades.
I understand, we're just implementing state statute, and you're correct, we are being preempted as far as what's, allowed and what's not allowed in our, in our land development regulations.
Just a little background. My sister's a former FBI agent, and while she did a lot of counterintelligence work, the majority of her career was fraud. So what is the punitive actions when someone lies to staff? Like a developer. They come in and they say, we're going to have X and we're going to have Y and we're going to have Z, and we meet everything under the Live Local Act, and you guys do your due diligence, but you're not able to catch it. What is the fallback? Because we're talking 30 years under this not so good written.
Well, if you turn to Section 5 of the proposed policy, for example, the very last provision, D4, it talks about failure to maintain and make available certain records showing the affordable housing is accurate, would subject the development to the normal requirements of the county's comp plan and code of ordinance. So essentially, you lose your Live Local Act status.
And you're, according to this, you're be charged with perjury. So, nice slap on the wrist. But there is no financial disincentive to not lie. So that's where I have a lot of heartburn on that. I also passed out a copy of the ordinance 62-6305, the density bonus for affordable housing, and also 62-6307, the workforce housing incentive. Both of these are developments to be located in unincorporated Brevard County within any coastal hazard area defined by the comprehensive plan or by any of the barrier islands are not eligible for density bonus under this section. Will that be enforced in this BC 100?
So the Live Local Act preempts the county as it relates to density. However, there are other provisions of the comp plan and the county code that do still apply that in a practical sense may prevent developments in those areas from occurring, especially particularly highly dense developments. But that said, if a development did meet the provisions of the Live Local Act, staff is required to approve it regardless of.
So my question is, will this language be put in the BCC 100 to exempt the barrier islands, and the coastal high hazard zone areas, because that's more life safety than tax relief for developers.
I would defer to Alex behind me, but I don't think we have the authority to carve out exemptions to the Live Local Act provisions.
So as
Okay,
Billy
'cause
stated previously, there's two paths essentially that developers are going to have available to them. This would be one path under 623605, which is what you referenced for density bonus. There's also the density bonus under the Live Local Act itself. So this prohibition about there being coastal hazard area limitations or barrier island limitations are for availing themselves of the density bonus under 6305, excuse me. So again, there's two paths that are available to the developers, and that's the way the legislature had it drafted.
Okay, but, so currently we haven't, you cannot increase the density on, let's say, Merritt Island or the coastal beach areas that are unincorporated. So is that going forward?
Right,
Is
so
that
the
gonna be,
developer.
is that going to be the recommendation that you're going to take to the board?
Well, all I can say is that the developer would not be available, or this density bonus would not be available to the developer under 6305 if the property's in a coastal hazard area or on the barrier islands.
Well, I'd
So
like-
that limitation only applies to this section, it says,
Right.
not in general.
So when developing the policy of BCC 100, can you include that language just as emphasis?
Well, again, that, we're applying, the BCC 100 is the application of the Live Local Act. And it doesn't seem to provide any flexibility with respect to the density, zoning, and height limitations.
But it takes away the building and zoning criteria if it meets the other thresholds. And what I'm looking at right here is you're saying that tax exemptions for developers trumps life safety. So I want to make that crystal clear. that-
Sure, I don't think that's what staff is saying. I think
No,
that's how
I'm
the.
not saying you.
Right, okay.
You're trying to implement a policy that a very poorly written Senate bill was written on. Because theory is one thing, but theory has the baggage of the assumptions that go with it. And this is all theory. You go to Lee County and look at Hurricane Ivan and what happened down there, and just draw your own conclusions. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just go back to G7, I apologize. But for planning's perspective in the CAO, we just want a little bit of guidance with respect to this board voting to allow the county to proceed with amending the code to include a definition of major transit stop. And if you have any additional feedback, obviously the map will be something that we could provide to the board, but just in general, if you would authorize us to proceed, I guess, to the board, or if you have any additions, we'd be happy to incorporate them in the definition.
Alex, I didn't think we had any authority. I thought that only came from the county commission
Authority for what?
to tell you to go ahead and include all this.
To give guidance to staff, so when we go to the board, we would have whatever concerns or issues you guys might have addressed by the time we go to the Board of County Commissioners.
So you want a motion?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
And the motion would be to give you the ability to actually come up with a definition. It doesn't, we won't tell you what the definition needs to be.
Well, you have the sample definition language in front of you, so,
We didn't like it.
yeah, if you could be specific as to how, and
To
then,
define it? Oh.
right, and then we could bring that to the board, or at least your comments to the board.
Can we Mr. Chairman, can we table this because the date has not been set for the board? And
That
we
would have
can-
to come from probably our legal.
Yeah, we'd have to table it to a time certain for the next P and Z LPA meeting.
And then we can
do we know when
generate
it
our
is?
list?
October 16th is the next hearing date.
That would work.
And would they have the
Unless you wanna
map
do
by
a
that date?
Special meeting, like a workshop or something.
I'm sure we could have the locations identified in the agenda report brought before this board. Yes, sir.
So I would support that if we're going to have the map by that date, table it till the next
Correct.
meeting.
Yeah. agreed. So I'll move to table it.
And
Table
Robert can do more research.
All of us can.
I get, yeah,
Not
I
just
can research
Robert.
it.
Don't put the burden on him.
I'll give you pictures of my deployments.
Oh, that's good.
I've had to
Actually, that's
fish
good.
people out of flooded areas.
So if I understand, the direction is to continue this item to October 16th for staff, to give staff enough time to prepare a map to show the location of these areas that are within a half mile of the major transit stops.
Yeah, you could do it with circles, you know, if you find the major stop. just
Correct,
do a
yeah,
circle
it'll
around it.
be a half mile radius.
Right. That'd be perfect.
And also, Robert, you had some questions about,
Yeah, about the couple of items that are in the Senate bill and how we would
Correct.
apply them
But
locally.
that's G8. We're
So
talking
we
about G7.
can,
We're talking
if
about
we
both.
can either want to have a
He wants-
workshop, or we
table both of
can
them?
come in and I can give you my recommendations, but I'd prefer it be a collaborative effort.
Can you clarify a question? This is a Senate bill that was passed. Does the Board of County Commissioners have the right to deviate from this bill in the way the language was written?
We are required to implement the Live Local Act. So what the Live Local Act requires, we must be able to, for example, administratively approve those developments that qualify.
So this is an example of the commission has to pass it. Can they modify it? Or if they modify it, are they violating this new Senate bill?
Well, this policy was drafted in such a way to try to implement the Live Local Act in the most straightforward way possible. We didn't go beyond more or less than what the Live Local Act required the county to implement. So that was the philosophy in crafting this particular policy.
You're just trying to change the county rules to abide by Live Local, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So it's pretty much counterintuitive that it's Live Local. I mean, this smacks of Putinism. I mean,
It's not home rule.
it's not home rule at all.
But
So,
again,
I
my
mean,
point is.
Staff, I want to apologize. I mean, I have strong feelings about this bill the whole time it was going through. It's no reflection on you and the great job that you guys do with your research, but this is like the Patriot Act. There was nothing patriotic about it. So this is, what it's called and what it does are two different things. That's just my opinion.
Do you want to enlighten us some more here? You've come,
please, step up. We're just
we
having
got
discussion.
the big gun in here. I think he needed to talk.
I don't know about that, but I think it's been a good discussion, so I appreciate all of that. You know, we're just trying to get through what the legislation has done to us, right? And we're trying to make it where we can continue to help people develop. And of course, if it means that they're going to live local and have affordable housing, which we've heard our commissioners say many times is something that's important to them. And that, so we thought the policy would be the best way to go forward in administrating that until we see how these, you know, how the development community is going to respond to that locally here, and then what kind of developments we're going to get. And then we would move into, as Billy mentioned, and that more of what we've seen in West Melbourne or Melbourne, where they've gone in and physically done code changes. Right now, I can't tell you what part of the code we should change or we shouldn't change, because I don't know how it's going to happen. We've had one conversation with a developer on Live Local, and it was to convert an existing motel into into affordable housing. So if that's the route that we're going to see here, I can't say that it will continue, but if that's what we're going to see, then that's a different parameter than what we normally see from out of the ground construction, right? So the other thing I would say is this is a board policy. So what we were looking for here is just simply your input, and then we move it forward to the board, because the board is going to, it's not a code, it's not an administrative order or anything like that. It's just a policy that we're asking the board to say, hey, this is the parameters that we want you to set for the developers as they come in and we look at administering the Live Local Act. So that's one piece of it.
The second piece is I do appreciate you guys giving us a little bit more information on what you're looking for the code change, because that's which was G7, because that's important, because that's the one piece as the statute says that we must have a definition for that transit stop. And so we can do the list, we can do a map and bring that back to you all. I know it's been a struggle for us. It's been, I don't know, probably since 1st of July that we've been wrestling with this and figuring out how to bring it forward. And here you see we are in September. So a lot of time has passed. Even getting the legislative intent was not an easy task from our standpoint, and working with housing. I mean, not housing, we did work with housing and working with transit to come up with that definition. And there was a lot of, variation went back and forth. But that's where we landed, and we thought that was the best foot forward for you all. So I just wanted to mention that as you guys, we appreciate the conversation as always. And if there's any questions for me directly, please let me know.
But, I think it was important that the mapping portion of it, because that's one of the degrees of difficulty here,
Sure.
is saying, hey, I thought I could because there was a bus stop there, but then you find out.
Well, and the bus stops may alter or may change just by ridership, and that's something that's out of our control. So I think that's why in the agenda item you saw examples.
Right.
Because I don't know that we could physically list every one, and we may put one on there and they may change it based on the ridership.
If it does change, if they move it, what happens to an existing facility that was put up because it was a half a mile?
I think that's just a mechanism to help us reduce the parking. So I think that's all that does. It doesn't say that if you got to be within a half mile, you are now can be considered live local. All it does is allow us to get, or somebody to get below the one space per one unit. That's all that it.
Yeah, but I'm saying that if
does.
that particular transit stop was relocated by the bus company, if that someone had built a facility a half a mile from the old one, and it is no longer a half mile from the new one, do they go out of compliance? I mean, we have to look at that also down the road.
I don't know that they would necessarily go out of compliance. We would be looking at that's just a mechanism to approve that lesser standard in parking. So I don't think that it's a given. I think there's still a review process. There's still going to be questions. There's going to be waivers that have to be obtained. It's just that's the mechanism for them to go that route. So they can say, hey, look, I'm within a half mile of that major transit stop, so I want to reduce my parking from one unit down to 0.75. Just numbers, right? Don't hold me to that's what we're going to approve. But they could say that because this is what we have. In our parking code right now, we have to evaluate multiple modes of transportation. So somebody could come in today. Forget live local. Somebody could have came in June 1st and said, I want to read, I'm a multifamily affordable workforce housing development. Your code says I give you 1 unit to the acre. One unit to one parking
spot
space
per
to the
unit.
unit. Yep, thank you. It's getting late on a Monday. It's been a long day. And I want to waive that, and I'm going to waive it because I got multiple modes of transportation. I'm in a walkable community, like in Vieira, where they could walk to different places to work. I have mass, transit stops and so on and so forth, and we probably would look at that and grant it.
Mhm. Is there a drop-dead date that this has to be adopted by the county? Like there was for the land surveys that they had to do for available lands in the
I'm
county?
going to let,
There's nothing that says when we have to have a policy in place. Today, it's effective in the sense that if a developer came forward, we would have to give them what the Live Local Act requires. It's already effective. But we
Yeah,
don't
because the
have to say-
governor signed it in July, yeah.
You know what I envision, there's a lot of discussion here, but I'm not sure there's that much land available for this. I'm not, especially in the unincorporated area.
it's going to be interesting.
I don't think Vieira set aside a whole bunch.
It's going to be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be redevelopment.
Coming from the
developers up. I'm sorry if somebody else was speaking.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
The way that we're looking at this, will there also be a provision, and I guess this is more for staff, what if they're going to build a mass transit stop? I presume that will need to contemplate it because, say, like they want to take advantage of it, is that something that they could then propose? If it's part of a binding development plan or other?
You mean like a private developer come in and say, I'm going to build a transit stop that would be like a mass transit stop? I think that's something that's always could be potentially on the table. For instance, the Vieira company came in and they built a transit stop that we have here. So I think it's just part of that multiple modes of transportation. And so that's something that could come in. I won't say that it wouldn't, but it would have to be accepted by transit. So, like one of the challenges for us is we're trying to say transit is going to have to tell us where those are, because I can't go out and say this is one, and as soon as I pick one, they'll say, no, it's not that one, it's this one. So, but we can get you the map. We can give you some more examples of where those are. So I do appreciate that and that, but I wanted to mention on the policy, but if there's other questions.
Do you believe in your heart that this will help developers?
So the first question of that would be, we'd have to take a vote if I have a heart. That's a quote from somebody sitting in the back. There he is.
John won't, what do you think?
No, I think it will. I think that there's some opportunity probably for some redevelopment here. I think Mr. Minibu mentioned a good thing. I think, raw land being developed this way, it's going to be interesting to see if that demand or if that opportunity is there. I just don't know. We don't typically see it much now, before Live Local, so hopefully Live Local will help that aspect of it, because it did free it up. Before, and I think the point that Mr. Sullivan was making is before, you would have to look at it and say, are you compatible from a land use standpoint? Well, they've already said if it's industrial or if it's commercial, it's an administrative process, whether we like it or not. But they did not affect all of our homes by saying that also applies to residential.
They took it out.
Yeah,
It was in there originally, but they took it out.
So they didn't, maintain that aspect of it.
But Orange County is going through this shenanigans right now because a majority of their acreage in unincorporated is planned development. And so what happens? And they're being dictated to, and they have a lot of heartburn with it.
Yeah, and so I think I haven't vetted Orange County's PUD regulations, but I know some others in that area, once you get the initial approval of a planned unit development, then increases in density is an administrative process. So that's probably what I would say is why they're trying to go in and get those in place now, so they don't have someone like me that has to have that burden of, you guys approved 10 units to the acre, somebody comes in on the back door and I'm saying, okay, now you got 30. I wouldn't like that.
Well, and again, I did land development in South Florida for a very long time, and, we got parking allowances in downtown Miami with the Performing Arts Center. It was a $700 million project I was very much involved with. So there are mechanisms prior to this that will help, but it has to meet a business plan. And the business plan will say, am I going to build an intermodal area that's going to say, am I part of a busing compound? Am I now, is technology going to change to go away from rail to some other modes? So we don't have 30 years. Technology folds a lot faster than those 30 years because, I remember 30 years ago, and I'm using technology that wasn't available 30 years ago.
Sure.
So that's some of my heartburn and some of my concerns.
Do you believe that this will help generate more affordable housing in the county?
I think it does.
You think,
I
okay.
think it does.
I sit on the Affordable Housing Council, and I'm trying to push more affordable housing, and I was hopeful that this would help. You know, more developers would step up, they'll follow the procedures that is set down, and that we'll get more units out there, whether it's single-family units or multifamily.
I think it certainly removes some of the obstacles that developers would have to go through.
John, I'll remind you that the word affordable is subjective.
It
and
is
they
very
have-
subjective.
they
I
have
don't like
this-
the definition
They have
either.
this formula in here, and like I said,
Yeah.
theory is great, but it comes with the baggage of assumptions.
Thank you. Thanks, Ted. So you want a motion to table on 7?
We would need to table both, wouldn't we?
Well, for G7, it's actually an ordinance change, so I think that's what we would need a motion on. The other's a board policy, so it's treated differently. Thank you.
So I'll move to table G7, and we'll come back on the 16th with recommendations. How about if we make recommendations before the 16th, so you don't have to scramble between that date and the next board meeting?
The only issue I could see there potentially is sunshine violations.
Well, no, I didn't say we're
that's
going to
true.
talk to each other.
Okay, so how do you anticipate?
That we would
providing-
submit it to staff in the form of an email or something.
So to that, I would say it's best to avoid something like that, obviously, but we can receive emails from individual members and just compile them and then present them at the next board meeting. It wouldn't give you any time to really consider or address them before then, unfortunately, I don't think.
Wouldn't it be in the agenda package, though? Almost like public comment? Our recommendation.
I think we're kind of running into a sunshine issue there. I mean, we're obviously, from a staff perspective, we can have those questions addressed leading up to the meeting, but
Because I would just think that if we have our meeting and we don't know what was suggested by members of the board, then it'll be an open discussion. We'll be here all night.
I'm not in favor of moving this thing around to adjust it because you got the sunshine law, and I'm practicing law again, but you're gonna be in trouble. We ought to do it just the way it's designed to go here and then leave it at that.
Just table it and then go on the 16th?
Well, I think they're satisfied with that. They haven't said they needed to be here earlier or anything, so let's do it on the 16th.
Then I'll make that motion.
I need a second.
Second.
I'll second that.
Well, Robert already seconded it. Motion by John to table till the 16th, a second by Robert. On item G7, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously.
Mr. Chair, just for next time, so we're not using the word table anymore, we're using the word continued. So anytime that we have used to say table.
That's not Robert rules.
We're supposed to say it's continued.
Okay.
Huh? It's not your rules. That's not Robert rules, though.
All
They
right,
use the
meeting
word
adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.